which is why if we cut down all the forests in the tropical area, we will alter the entire global climate. Because if there's no longer an evapotranspiration rate, there's nothing to put the moisture in the atmosphere to move back down. Okay, so all of the globe will change accordingly. And then coupled with this, we actually have, and they're not reflected on here, there are ocean currents. Okay? We have a very cold ocean current running down the west coast of California until you get down just west of Santa Barbara. Okay? That dictates why we have these dense coastal fogs. Okay? It dictates why we are warm in the valley and other factors related to that in other areas, and why, when we get even a small change in sea surface temperature of just a couple of degrees, such as we get with what we refer to as El Niños, that changes the entire climate in the entire western United States and elsewhere, changes everything that lives in the ocean. It only takes 1 to 2 degrees Celsius. Very little indeed. So that attempts to put it in perspective. So let's look at those other habitats. This is savanna, tropical grassland that will be dictated by the predominant vegetation being grasses of one description or another. Okay? And secondly, by scattered trees but no dense forests. Okay? One of the defining characteristics of savanna, and indeed a lot of grasslands, is that they normally have fires occurring as a natural part of their habitat. They occur, they burn through, and there are a lot of plants, as there are in other habitats, where fire is an essential component. This little window keeps reminding you that these are the factors that are dictating these. Of course, the African savanna in particular is well known because of its very large diversity of mammalian, large hoofstock of some description and the predators that feed on them. It also is defined by these. So what are those guys? Those are termite mounds. Okay? So termites are one of the important determinants of community structure on the savanna. Okay? Here's some deserts. They vary widely. These 3 photographs all happen to be of deserts in the western United States. Don't think of a desert as just a mass of sand with nothing growing. Okay, that's not true. Many deserts are dominated by rocks. Many deserts have a lot of vegetation, and the ones in the southwestern United States will be an example of that. That's a desert in Arizona. Those are the sort of defining cactus of the Arizona desert, the saguaro cactus. Those cacti, by the way, are not found naturally in California. They are not found west of the Colorado River, which is the boundary. So if you see one in California, it's been artificially planted there by humans. Okay? So for some reason, the people who designed golf courses in the Coachella Valley around by Palm Springs seem to feel the need to plant saguaro. They are not native to there. The bottom right-hand picture is Death Valley. Okay? Death Valley is a desert basin, which is the lowest place in the Western Hemisphere. Okay? So bad water in Death Valley, the level of the land is 286 feet below sea level. So it is not a place to visit in summer. Okay, mean temperatures of bad water in Death Valley during the month of August run about, mean average temperature, run about 106 Fahrenheit. Okay. So, yes, Andrew? What's it like to cold nights, meaning potentially below freezing. But often really nice days in the 60s and 70s. Okay? The best time to visit the southwestern deserts is the spring. Okay? Good time to visit there. Primarily has to do with the phenology of plant reproduction. Because rainfall is extremely limited. Annual rainfall in Death Valley is less than 2 inches a year. But it tends to fall in very short, intense bursts at the beginning of the spring. And that causes all the annual wildflowers to bloom fairly shortly thereafter. So there's a short period in the spring which varies by year and so on, when everything blooms in a couple of week period. And that's the best time to visit the desert, when you see all that. So the desert comes alive. These deserts are extensive in the western United States. You know a little bit about the sorts of plants that you will find in the southwestern deserts from the plant portion of this course. Now this shows the subdivision into the 4 major deserts, which are all defined by slight differences in when rainfall occurs. So if you look at the Great Basin Desert, most of the precipitation that occurs in the Great Basin is as snow in the winter. It's a high elevation desert. So a lot of the Great Basin is above 4,000 feet in elevation. When you get down into our closest desert to here, the Mojave, most of the rainfall occurs in the winter as rain rather than snow. When you get down into the Sonoran Desert, it's mostly as rain, okay? And it largely occurs in a bimodal distribution. The rain occurs both in the fall and in the spring. Okay? Whereas when you get to the Chihuahuan Desert, which extends down the mainland portion, the main central portion of Mexico, whereas the Sonoran Desert is on the western boundaries, okay? Most of the rainfall there occurs not in the spring but in the fall. And these are the major deserts in North America, and each of them is distinguished by very different biota, different animals and plants. And the various photos, this, by the way, this is the defining plant of the Mojave Desert. You know you're in the Mojave Desert when you see the first Joshua tree. Okay, Joshua trees are giant lilies. Okay? They're monocotyledons and they're lilies and they have big flowers. And the first place you will see, if you drive from here in Fresno, okay, and you want to enter the Mojave Desert and you take the standard route, you go down to Bakersfield, take off from Bakersfield across the southern edge, the northern edge of the Tehachapi Mountains, and as you go over and you start to tend down towards Barstow, you will hit Joshua trees for the first time, and that's when you know you're in the Mojave Desert. Okay. Chaparral we have locally. This is a very dense coastal and foothill dominated by very woody, dense shrubs that either occurs in coastal or in the foothill habitat. So there's plenty of chaparral outside Fresno as you ascend into the foothills through the oak woodland and before you get up to the pine belts up in Shaver Lake. Being as some of my research is involved trapping small mammals, mice and rats in a variety of habitats, this is the most difficult and challenging habitat I've ever had to work in because chaparral is often so dense that there's no way to walk through it. You either have to crawl under it or crawl over the top of it, okay? Which makes it very challenging to work in as opposed to working in a more open habitat. On top of that, lots of the plants have got spines and everything else. It's tough work, very, very tough, challenging work. And crawling under it is not what I recommend. You never know what you're going to bump into when you're sort of crawling around on your hands and knees under there. Okay. Most of the bulk of the central United States, everything east of the Rocky Mountains and before you get to the Appalachians and the eastern seaboard of the U.S., would historically have been grassland. Area dominated by annual grasses that grow up, and it would have been habituated by grazing animals of some description. We're talking pronghorn and elk and bison by the millions. Very, very little of that prairie and grassland in the central United States exists any longer. We replaced it with agricultural crops, with corn and wheat and so on. So there's very little of our natural prairie left. And that also means there's very little of the animals that ordinarily lived on that prairie. We almost made bison extinct. Okay? By overhunting them, we did. There's plenty of bison left now. Same goes for pronghorn antelope. Okay? And so the rainfall in a temperate grassland is usually somewhere between 14 and 30 inches a year. It occurs in various timings depending where it is. Okay? And there's a lot of different grass types. And of course, when you think about it, it's no wonder we were able to grow wheat and barley and oats and rye, because what are they? They are artificially selected grasses that we have grown up to be our variants over the years. Temperate deciduous forest is dictated by hardwood trees, in other words, not conifers, that are typically deciduous and drop all their leaves in the winter, so that's how we get the beautiful scenes like in the middle, that's somewhere like Vermont or Maine, where all the trees change colour, just like they're doing around here. Okay. And coniferous forests, without dwelling on them, of course we have an enormous bank of those here in California at the higher elevations, and this is the plant type that is dominant over the